it's been a really uplifting day, lots of positive talks, and while there is a positive element to the story we're going to discuss, there also is a flip side to this story, and I'm aware that some of the items that we're going to discuss may be triggering for people in the room, but you couldn't be at a better place. We're at a Mind and Creative Minds conference. So if there is anybody that is triggered by anything we discussed today, do please find myself or any member of the Minding Creative Minds staff, and we can signpost you to other places you can talk, or we can talk to you after today. So just to say that. My name is Maria Fleming. I'm wearing a couple of hats today, which seems to be the theme. There should have been a big hat stand at the side of the stage for all our hats. So I'm the chair of the NCFA, which is the National Campaign for the Arts, and we are a volunteer-led grassroots campaign, and we work to make the case for the arts in Ireland, keeping the arts to the front and centre in national and local policies. You are the National Campaign for the Arts, our members, and there is a volunteer steering committee who work on your behalf. And it's really important, the work that we do. I was part of a campaign a number of years ago, Waking the Feminists, and when we were involved in that, myself and the founder, Leon Bell, were at an event where one of the first female generals from the Irish Defence Forces spoke to us, and she said it's very important to keep campaigning, because she said if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So National Campaign for the Arts are at the table for you to make sure we are not on the menu. I'm also here as CEO of First Fortnight, which is Ireland's mental health arts festival. The clue is in the title. We happen the first 2 weeks of the year every year. And actually, Mind and Creative Minds came out of a project in First Fortnight. So we're like proud parents here today. But one of the speakers from the audience earlier was talking about, artists making work that reflects mental health and mental ill health. And the aim of First Fortnight is to eliminate the stigma attached to mental health, and we do that through arts and cultural action. And we work with artists like Emily Quinn, whose exhibition Musical Strings was in our festival in January of this year. And through conversations around art, we're looking to break down the stigma attached to mental health. So I'm very delighted and proud to be here today with both those hats on. And we have an amazing panel. I'm going to ask the panel each to introduce themselves, and then I'll give you a little bit more information about the topic we're discussing today. So could we start with you, Sinéad?
Yeah, no problem. My name is Sinéad Keogh. I am a partner in Strata Financial. We specialise in doing accounts and tax for the arts industry, so I am the trigger warning. I can see everyone's face drop, and I know it's 3:30, so I hope you've all had a coffee and you don't fall asleep when I start to speak.
So my name's Mohamed. I'm a spoken word artist from Dublin, Ballymun, and I'm a recipient of the BIA pilot scheme as well.
That deserves a round of applause. I'm Donnelan. I'm a traditional Irish musician. I'm a mentor. I'm a curator. I ran a festival for 10 years. I did an arts practice PhD in the University of Limerick, where I worked for 10 years, and I became self-employed in 2020 as a musician, a curator, a radio broadcaster, a producer, and a mentor. Like everybody else so far, I think the multiple hats are on today, and a mentor with Mind and Creative Minds.
Great. So what we're looking at discussing today is the basic income for the arts. Sorry, my background is theatre. I tend to project. So I'm trying to remember that. I have a microphone. We're looking at the basic income for the artists. Now, some of you might know loads about it, but I'm going to do a little bit of an idiot's guide to basic income for the arts for those in the room who may not be aware. Those of you who were at this event last year might remember Angela Dorgan, who was my predecessor. She was the previous chair. And she, along with her colleagues on the previous steering committee, really fought, and I would say are responsible for us achieving basic income for artists in Ireland at the moment in a pilot programme. So during COVID, the Minister pulled together a task force to see what is the best thing that the government could do to support artists in the time of COVID. And the number one thing that came back from the task force was introduce a basic income for artists. So thankfully, our Minister, Catherine Martin, really took that on board, and she ran with that, and along with some really dedicated members of her department, investigated and turned around quite quickly a model of basic income for artists. And what they instigated was a pilot project, which is to run for 3 years. And that pilot project would be for 2,000 people. But really crucially, there would also be a control group of 1,000 people who would not receive the basic income but would give information back to the pilot. Also crucially, what happened was there had been pilots of basic income, not just in the arts, but like universal basic income pilots in other jurisdictions around the world, and none of them had made it to the end of their pilot scheme or run because there had always been a change of government in the middle of the pilot. So Minister Catherine Martin, the department and the task force all worked really hard to get buy-in from the opposition parties. So even though we're going to have an election in our country no later than March next year, the opposition parties have signed up that they will see the pilot basic income scheme through to the end. And what has been amazing about the scheme is that we have an opportunity now to look at what the reality is for our sector. We know anecdotally and we know the lived experience, but now we have hard facts. So over 9,000 people applied for the pilot basic income scheme. 8,200 of those were deemed eligible, and there were various criteria to show that you were a practicing or emerging artists. They surveyed the 8,200 people who applied, and then they continued to survey the 2,000 people who received the pilot basic income scheme for 3 years, and that is €325 each week that they receive. And then there is also, which is just so brilliant, 997 people in a control group who applied for the income, were not successful in receiving it, but fill out the same surveys that everybody in receipt of the basic income do. And what that has given us is information that I have to say is really sobering. So at the 6-month point of the scheme, the department released 3 different reports, and I would really urge you go onto the department's website and read those reports. And one is the status of the artist in Ireland today. One is looking at comparisons between artists and the general population, and one is looking at the experience for those in receipt of basic income. And there's an element in that research, something that I had never heard of before, which is a survey that they do in the general population called enforced deprivation, where they ask the same 11 questions of everybody, and if you hit a certain amount of those things, you are considered to be living in deprivation. And they are statements like, can you afford to buy a winter coat? Can you put your heating on as often as you would like? Can you buy a present for a family member with it? Like, I get emotional, sorry, when I, like, things that we would just assume we would take for granted. And of those 11 items, when they look in the general population, like looking at the census, 19% of the general population fall into what's considered deprivation. 53% of artists in the control group were in deprivation. The good news story is that that changed to just 33% for those in receipt of basic income. So the basic income payment is having a positive effect, and the effect that we thought it would have on those who are part of that scheme. But what it does show us is that compared to the general population, we are still way behind. One of the things that came out of the study, and again, only because Minister Martin put a gold standard survey against this that we can put against the general population, we can see that in the general population, 65% of people live in a household where there is a homeowner. and that falls down to 33% when you look at the artist population. So we know anecdotally, but now we can go to government and say our sector is disproportionately impacted by the housing crisis because more of our sector are living in rented accommodation. So I know this is a panel and it seems like I'm on a soapbox now, but I am robbing the mic because for me this is a call to action. When we come to our general election, please, 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 the first thing you say to everybody, the politician that comes on your door, let's have a full rollout of basic income for the artists because it really works. And we know that it is really needed. And we now have the statistics and the information to make that case. But alongside the statistics and information, we also have anecdotal pieces of information that artists like Adam have filled out in the survey that they are generously filling on our behalf. And artists that receive the basic income, one artist reported that their partner had become ill over the period of time and they were only able to keep their household going because they were in receipt of basic income. And had they not had that, they would have got into real difficulty in terms of their household. Another artist reported, again, when we think of the general population and people don't know this, like one person reported that what they could do now is they could go for a cup of coffee with their friends because they had the bus fare to get there and back and they had the money for the coffee. And before they received the basic income for the artist, that was not something that they could do. Another couple who were both in receipt of basic income reported that they, for the first time, got quoted for a mortgage. Like financial institutions wouldn't even entertain them before that. So in case you haven't guessed, I am in support of us really campaigning hard for a rollout of basic income for the artists. And I will stop now and talk to the panel, and apologies. So, Sinéad, I wanted to start with you. You have clients who are coming to you for tax issues, and we were speaking beforehand, you were saying you really noticed, where the basic income could come in to play for people that you work with, your clients.
Yeah, look, we have a number of clients that have received the payment. It's made a massive difference to them in what they're able to either give up the part-time job or they're able to maybe. I actually have one guy who has decided to actually move home as part of it because then he can make more of the money, so he can really focus on his art. And that's really, really important. The flip side, and here is the trigger, is that anyone in the room, like there was a massive thing around, and it was quite stressful for people to actually register for income tax. And it's terrifying dealing with the revenue commissioners if you've never dealt with them. I deal with them every day, so it just doesn't, it's water off a duck's back. But if I was to try and paint a canvas, I wouldn't know where to start. So I think that is one thing that people are, they're getting this payment now, and now they're trying to think of what do I need to do next. So if you are in that situation, like we are as part with Mind and Creative Minds going to hold a lunch and learn on the 31st of July, and it will apply to people even who are not in receipt of it. If you are an artist and you need some taxation help and that type of thing, we're going to just do a little walkthrough and a conversation. But as a whole, what I'm seeing is it's really benefiting our clients. Like if anyone in receipt of it, it's a massive benefit. The one thing I will say, but Stephen Rourke, who's with me today and works with me, said to me before we came on, the one thing that we did see, and that's one thing that I would really be campaigning for when it's brought back again, because it has to be brought back. It really supports the art sector. But one of the things that we were finding is we do a lot of music work. Half a band got it and half a band didn't. And that causes resentment between people who work together all of the time. And they want to be in a room creating, and half the band are actually quite financially secure now, and the other may not be. So that was one of the things that we are seeing as part of on our clients. And as you say, like I do have people who are now able to are in a position to be able to go and apply for that mortgage, which is great.
Thank you for being the friendly face of tax in the room today. So, 31st of July is that Lunch and Learn,
Yeah.
and it's not just in relation to basic income.
No.
If you have any tax issues, bring them to Sinead. And am I right, Eilish, in saying that people can book onto that now? That's available now on the Mind and Creative Minds website. Adam, I'm just going to come to you, the most important man in the panel, because you are in receipt of basic income. And the amazing thing is that the department went to great lengths to ensure that this was anonymous. Nobody has to say, apart from to the taxman, nobody has to say to the department, to the minister, to the Arts Council, to anybody. You don't have to declare that you're on basic income. It is just something completely personal to yourself. So Adam has chosen to out himself as somebody in receipt of basic income in order to be able to speak to us and share some of his experiences. So it is huge on his behalf. We had myself and Adam were at another conference last month that was about basic income as well, and there was another artist who had outed themselves speaking on the panel, and he was talking about one of the differences that it made to him. The artist was Tom Mescal, and he was saying like that he had suffered, as we all do, from people saying to him, you know, you'll get great exposure, and he was saying what they don't realise is that people die from exposure every day. But Adam, thank you for being public about your experience, and would you maybe share with us the difference that it's made for you to be in receipt of basic income?
Yeah, well, I suppose the first thing is, you know, as you mentioned, it was a lottery, so I feel like lucky that I even got it. But I'm not sure of what the criteria was for being selected. So when I get my approval for it, I get the validation and I get the confidence that like my art is, you know, worth the funding, I suppose. You asked me before, like, how has it changed me as an artist and as a civilian? And I was saying that I wouldn't differentiate between that. It's kind of all connected. I suppose now, in my creative process, I'm not creating from a place of struggle or hardship anymore. And I suppose the main thing with that is, you know, it's expensive to record and it's expensive to put your music out and to produce. And when you're doing that, a lot of the stuff that you produce probably won't even make it out because it's all, you know, development work. And I suppose as well, it's allowed me to, I suppose, live a richer and fuller life because I don't have to work full time. I can work part time now. So I suppose those experiences benefit me, again, that will help me creatively and artistically. And I suppose, again, not having to create from a place of struggle and hardship means that I can, you know, focus on different themes, different emotions and different ideas. And I suppose the main thing that I'm going to use this for is to, you know, to have my album at the end of the pilot process. So I'm already, you know, in development of that, maybe at least a 10-track album. So yeah, so I suppose the biggest thing again is just the time and space that it offers me. So yeah, that's it. That's everything.
That's it. There is so much positive in that, and you would just wish that for every artist, wouldn't you? That they have that space, that they have that security, that it doesn't have to always be a struggle. Clee, coming to you, you're a mentor for Mind and Creative Minds, and you would have the experience of mentees coming to you that are not in receipt of basic income. So you've some thoughts and ideas about you know, the difference that it makes and what the current funding structures and situation in the arts sector means for artists.
Yeah. So I do a lot of mentoring on funding and putting proposals together, and a lot of it is, of course, to the Arts Council. But we're not targeting the Arts Council as the only funding agency. I'm just going to talk about it in general, the process and the delays, I suppose, for artists when they, first of all, spend weeks and months putting a proposal together, then they make an application, and then they have to wait 5 to 6 months to hear if they're approved or not. And in that time frame, they cannot create their idea that they've... So there could be 6 to 7 months of the year gone where an artist cannot produce. And if they had the basic income for that, there is testament to, in artists investing more through advertising, marketing, equipment, venues, and they're producing more art as a result. I mean, we have these findings already in the report. But also the other aspect of it is that a lot of the people that I've worked with on the mentorship program, there is a lot of, I suppose, struggle because they know that they might financially be in trouble. They have the finances to get them through to the end of the project that they're working on. And where do they go after that? And they've spent years investing. And people have actually said to me, I don't think I can stay in the business. And they've had to, take on the other part-time jobs. And as a mentor, you're there to support artists, and we do. But very often there's almost a shame in saying that they have to do other work. And I have to reassure them saying, I have to. I'm sitting here today as a mentor with all these different hats on. I have all the hats on because this is what we have to do, to survive. And is it okay that we spend the entirety of our creative lives living with uncertainty? That's the one thing I have to say. And the other aspect, I suppose, that I noted from the report was that, the increase of 19.2% less likely of struggling to create ends meet. I mean, why are we talking about ends meet? It's a desperate situation, but it's such a reality. And for a lot of the people that I've been working and mentoring with, for everybody, a lot of people in the sector, regardless of how many years you're at it, this is really genuine. So I really feel it has to happen. It has to. Right across the sector, this is really needed. And we've seen it over and over again today with all the different artists that have spoken here. Everybody is saying the same thing. Everybody is sharing the same struggles. The level of positivity in the room is absolutely astounding. If it doesn't have an impact, I agree with you, Maria, everybody, when they come knocking on the doors next March, we got to open up our mouths and say it. And I think as artists, we're not to be ashamed to say, I have to take another job as a waitress. I have to do this. Let's own it and scream about it until we get some results. Sorry, I'm a bit passionate like yourself about it. But, I mean, I think it's really, really important,
And in one way, I think, at times I question, have we done ourselves a disservice as a sector because we put best foot forward? We go out there and we be really positive about the work and the experience that we have and the passion we have for the work. And maybe shame stops us telling the rest of society or our politicians how hard we're finding it or how we're struggling with. Would you agree with that or not?
Well, what I actually think is that I think up to the last couple of years, artists have felt very isolated. And when you're working in isolation and you're struggling to get your own gigs and your exhibitions or whatever it is, you think maybe you're the only artist struggling. I think the organisations like we have here, Minded Creative Minds, there's this collective voice coming to the fore. And so I think it was maybe out of our own ignorance that we worked in isolation, and I suppose that inhibited us from saying it. But I think there is power in a collective voice, not being ashamed to say, because it's not what we're doing, it's the lack of support. Lack of support for the creative arts sector, and it's been proven over and over again how important and crucial it is for our holistic living as a collective on the island.
Thank you. Adam, you were saying at the beginning about the validation of, if you were included in the lottery, it meant they considered you an artist. Do you find you yourself now use that title more as a result of having had that validation? Do you identify publicly more as an artist, or has that changed?
Yeah, I think I would, because from getting the funding, I have more time to go into the art, whereas I didn't in the past when I was working full time. So it's, most of my time is taken up by that now. So I've really stepped into it since getting the time to do that. So yeah, it's something that I'd bring up more anyway. Yeah.
I know we're coming close to time. We have a few minutes left, and I do want to come out for questions. But Sinead, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to artists who are maybe sticking their head in the sand about their tax situation, what would you? And I'm not talking about myself, obviously.
I often find when people come into me, they have sometimes put their head in the sand and not dealt with it for a couple of years. And that's always a little bit of a challenge because we've a 3-year maybe catch up to do or something like that. One of the things is that it's very easy to go through somebody's bank statements. You can pull all the income, you can pull a good lot of expenses. It probably isn't going to be this massive tax bill. And the biggest thing we find is people coming into us is like a counselling service. They go out and like there's a spring in their step walking back out the door. And we're very passionate about working with artists and not charging them an absolute fortune either, to try and get everything up to date and get it sorted. So, and there are accountancy practices like that out there, not just ourselves. You might have people here from all over the country, and your local accountant might be the person to speak to rather than ourselves. I'm not trying to do myself out of work here now, but the biggest thing is just deal with it. It's probably not going to be the worst thing in the world. It probably is not. And then if you are on the scheme and you do have a part-time job, because of the level of income from the scheme, it may be pushing you up into the tax bracket where there is a little bit of money to pay. So it's just getting into that habit of squirreling away a little bit. So that's the only thing that I kind of have with it, is that just make sure that there is a little bit being put away for the taxman in October. Yeah.
Great. We'll go to there's roving mics. Are there questions from the audience? Here.
Hi, Maria. Just on the note of talking to your politicians when they come to your door, I'm a freelance stage manager and production manager, but we were not allowed to apply for the basic income pilot. So if you're going to talk to your politicians, try and get them to expand the programme to include everyone that involved in the arts, because it was interesting hearing talk about validation. For me and a lot of other people in my field, we felt completely unvalidated with not being allowed to apply for it. It was like someone had told us, you're not creative, which we all know is very untrue, because stage managers in particular are some of the most creative people when it comes to solving things quickly. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Baz. That's a very good point, and just to say that it was a pilot and there is room for us to negotiate changes for the things. I'm getting the big wrap up, and I'm very conscious that everybody else was so good today and I was the only one who was bold and hogged the microphone. So unfortunately we have to wrap it up there, but if you have questions, do come and find me on the breaks afterwards, and do please talk to your politicians. We need basic income for the arts rolled out. Thank you.